Undercover boss tastes the soup, spits it out, then realizes who cooked it. He only meant to taste a spoonful of soup, not to test, not to draw attention. Just a middle-aged man quietly seated at the window table, ordering the truffle mushroom cream soup, the signature dish that made New Dawn Caf famous. A dish tied to the values he once believed were unshakable honesty, purity, and no compromise. And yet just one spoon and he spit it out. No overreaction, no noise. He simply took a napkin, discreetly expelled the soup, then set the spoon down. From that moment on, no one in the caf knew a storm was about to hit. Michael Foster, 50 years old, founder of New Dawn Caf. But today he didn't bring that title with him. Wearing only an old cotton jacket, a gray knit cap, dusty round glasses, and a face that blended into any crowd. But his taste buds didn't. And what he just tasted wasn't the soup he once crafted with his own hands. It was bland, greasy, and harshly salty like MSG. No trace of fresh cream. No natural mushroom aroma. The truffle scent harsh and fake like cheap oil from a wholesale market. It felt like drinking a watered-down version from a trainee kitchen. Something about it made his throat close. He quietly looked up, glancing around. The caf operated like any other day. The barista smiled at customers. An elderly couple enjoyed toast at a nearby table. The waitress just handed out the final bill. No one suspected. No one noticed. Except for one. A young woman standing near the dishwashing sink in the kitchen. Her eyes briefly met his. There was something uneasy in that glance. Not fear, but a genuine alertness. Michael looked back at the spoon. He leaned down, wrapped it in a napkin, then stood up, carrying the tray to the service counter, where a young employee was reviewing the latest printed orders. "Hi there," Michael said gently, his gaze steady. "Could you tell me who made this soup today?" The young man looked up, slightly surprised. That'd be the head chef, Derek. Why is something wrong? Michael didn't answer. He simply placed the spoon on the tray and nodded. Then, I'd like to speak with him. Now, he didn't raise his voice, but the words traveled far enough to reach exactly the one hiding behind the stainless steel kitchen wall. Within a minute, Derek, a burly man with tattooed arms and an old chef's coat, stepped out. His eyes swept across the tray, then landed on Michael. He had no idea who he was about to face. "Something wrong with the soup?" Derek asked, tone, flat eyes flicking toward nearby staff as if measuring reactions. Michael didn't answer right away. He touched the edge of the spoon, then looked up. "You made this?" "Yeah. I ran the kitchen today." "Did you make any changes to the recipe?" Michael asked again, his voice calm and light, as if making small talk. Derek smirked. "No one cooks exactly by the book forever. I used a different kind of cream. And truffle oil's easier to control than the expensive stuff. Customers can't tell the difference anyway." At that moment, a quiet cough came from the cashier. And the dishwasher girl's eyes met Michael's again, this time clearer. Michael understood instantly. There was something only she knew. "Are you certain the ingredients used today matched the approved list in the system?" Michael asked. Derek shrugged, now visibly irritated. "Management approved it. They said as long as it's cheap, it's fine." Michael nodded. Silently. He gently placed his hand on his chest, then pulled out a small metal badge and laid it face down on the counter. The waiter behind the counter saw it first and quietly muttered, "Oh no." Derek frowned and stepped forward. "What's that?" Michael flipped the badge over, revealing the engraved words, "Michael Foster, founder and CEO, New Dawn Caf." The kitchen froze. And the surprise didn't end there. The dishwasher girl, who had remained silent until now, suddenly stepped out from behind the station, hands still wet, eyes steady. "I'm sorry. I can't stay silent anymore. I saw him pour in the moldy frozen cream this morning. I asked him, and he said boiling it would keep the customers from knowing." Michael turned toward her, really seeing her for the first time. A young face, not even 20, but with eyes full of courage. And he knew today's spoonful of soup didn't just carry a fake taste. It carried a truth that had been hidden for far too long. Linden Hills, a quaint lakeside neighborhood where oak trees shaded the roads and old wooden houses lined up like something from a painting. Right here, more than 15 years ago, Michael Foster had opened the third branch of New Dawn Cafe and once called it the heart of the brand. Steam-fogged glass windows, warm yellow light glowing from inside, melding with the chilly air of early winter. Outside, a few bicycles leaned against the wall, shoes crunching on the stone pavement. Everything looked just as he remembered, but only on the surface. Inside sat Michael Foster, 50 years old, the man who spent over 2 decades building a restaurant system based on 3 principles: real ingredients, heartfelt service, and uncompromised quality. He sat alone at the corner table. No one recognized him. Not a single glance lingered long enough to guess who he really was. A faded khaki jacket, a low-brimmed baseball cap, dusty, round glasses. He was used to hiding in plain sight, not out of fear of attention, but to observe what was really happening. And this time, he wasn't here to enjoy the food. About 3 weeks ago, his personal inbox, an address known only to a few close people, began receiving anonymous emails. The message repeated itself with growing urgency. Linden Hills branch is using cheap ingredients. They're changing the soup recipe and no one's checking. The new head chef only cares about costs, not customers. If you really care about what built New Dawn, come here. Order the soup. Taste it. At first, he thought it was an exaggeration. But by the 4th email, with a blurry photo attached, showing the label of a cheap truffle oil, the very kind he had banned across the system, he knew he couldn't ignore it. The Linden Hills branch wasn't just another store. It was a symbol. It was the place he once manned the counter for 3 straight months to personally train the team. The location that won Best Neighborhood CAF 5 years in a row. And the one place where he once promised himself, if I ever return, I want everything to be just as I left it. Today was that return. Walking into the cafe, he saw everything he remembered: oak wood tables, a small bookshelf in the corner, the smell of toasted bread, and dark roast coffee. But there was something off. At the counter, instead of smiling, the cashier took customer orders while glancing at a phone tucked under the POS terminal. A young barista with dyed orange hair was making drinks while whispering to a friend through Bluetooth earbuds. No one truly looked at the customers. Everything was done fast, cold, mechanical. Michael stepped up to the counter, ordered the truffle mushroom cream soup without hesitation. The very dish mentioned in the complaint emails. A dish he once took pride in knowing people came just to enjoy it on a rainy afternoon. The staff member took the order without clarifying details. No side dish suggestions. No questions about allergies or preferences. Just a nod and go wait at the table. Should be about 10 minutes. Michael returned to his seat. On the way, he noticed one small detail, but one he couldn't ignore. A server was carrying a tray from the kitchen. In his hand was a bowl of soup, but without a heat protection tray underneath. And Michael realized if the soup had been properly prepared at the right temperature, bare hands wouldn't be able to hold it comfortably. That bowl of soup had been reheated, not freshly made. From his table, he stared into the back kitchen. A glass panel blurred the view, but he could still make out the figures moving behind it. A burly man in a worn chef's coat was holding a bottle and pouring something into a large soup pot, a white plastic bottle with a yellow cap. Michael squinted. That bottle didn't resemble any of the cream or broth products he'd ever approved. It looked like an industrial soup base. The dishwasher girl passed the kitchen doorway at that moment, carrying a stack of aluminum trays. As she walked by, her eyes accidentally met Michael's. Just for a second, something flickered in those eyes. Hesitation. Then it vanished. Michael returned to his posture, sitting up straight. The soup arrived in a white porcelain bowl. Visually, it seemed well presented: a few slices of mushroom on top, a thin swirl of truffle oil, just as the recipe directed. He inhaled lightly. Not wrong, but not right either. And as the first spoonful touched his tongue, he knew every suspicion had just turned into fact. This wasn't just one careless branch. This was the breakdown of principle, systematic, intentional, and someone had enabled it. Worst of all, No one thought he would come back. But he did. And this time, he wasn't just checking the soup. He was checking to see what in his system had broken from the inside. The soup bowl had been placed in front of him neatly. No excess, nothing missing. Everything according to protocol. A porcelain spoon on the side, a napkin folded into a triangle, the aroma rising just enough to hint at truffle. A young server gave a quick smile, turning away, before Michael could fully see his face. From the outside looking in, no one would question that this was a typical picture-perfect new dawn dish. Michael sat still for a few seconds, not touching it. He looked at the bowl, but his eyes were scanning the entire space. A hard habit to break for someone who had spent over 10 years as a chef, managing every inch of a commercial kitchen. What lay beneath the creamy surface, he leaned in, sniffed lightly. No scent of slow-cooked butter. No fresh mushroom aroma. Instead, a faint, sour note. A telltale sign of aged cream or low-grade industrial product. The truffle scent was sharp, not delicate. It smelled like a bottle of chemically produced truffle oil, the kind he had banned from the chain since 2018. He knew what he had to do. But still he lifted the spoon. This wasn't about tasting food anymore. This was about tasting the truth. The first spoonful touched his tongue. He froze. The first sensation was cold. Not in temperature, but in emotion. As if each ingredient had been assembled separately. Fake fatty liquid, dried mushroom aroma, a hint of industrial saltiness. Nothing blended. No soul. No trace of the person who had once created this recipe. Michael set the spoon down. Not in haste. Not in anger. Then reached for a napkin, turned away, and quietly spat out the soup. Not out of disgust, but instinct. The instinct of a man who knew without question that what was in that bowl had no place in any kitchen he ever built. He quietly wiped his mouth. No one in the restaurant noticed. A family was chatting at a nearby table. A young man had just picked up his sandwich order at the counter. The barista laughed with someone outside the window. No one saw, or more accurately, no one wanted to see that moment. Michael stood up. Still gently holding the napkin, the bowl still half full. He didn't look at anyone. He simply walked slowly toward the counter where kitchen staff could see customers if they were paying attention. A spiky-haired employee name tag reading Leo was reviewing a newly printed ticket. Michael approached, his voice low, but clear. "Could you tell me who made this soup today?" Leo looked up startled. Derek. He's the head chef. Is there something wrong?" Michael didn't answer immediately. He gave a slight nod, his tone neither high nor low. "Then, I'd like to see him. Right now." Leo glanced toward the kitchen door, eyes uncertain. I'll call him." Michael stood still. In his mind, one thought kept circling. Who allowed this to happen? This wasn't just a poorly made dish. It was a sign of systemic negligence. None of his former management team would have approved cheap ingredients unless someone at the top had first allowed it. From behind the stainless steel door, a figure appeared. Derek, tall, broad-shouldered, with a thick beard, walked with a heavy stride. His white chef coat was faded. His expression wasn't hostile, nor arrogant, but it was the look of someone who had clashed with difficult customers many times and had no intention of backing down. "Hello? I'm Derek, head chef. Is there a problem with the soup?" Michael nodded, pointing to the bowl still on the tray. "You made this, yes." Was the original recipe altered? Derek shrugged. "I used different ingredients for better cost efficiency. Replaced fresh cream with plant-based base. Used a newer truffle flavoring. Same components, really. Customers don't know the difference." Michael stayed silent. That last sentence sent a chill through him. Customers don't know. Not because it was wrong, but because it perfectly captured the mindset that had shattered every commitment he ever built. And then the unexpected, a small voice from behind spoke up. I'm sorry, but I saw him pour spoiled cream into the soup pot this morning. I asked him, and he said boiling it would make it fine." The entire room went still. Michael turned around. It was the dishwasher girl, her face still youthful hands clutching a damp towel. Her eyes never left the soup bowl, but her voice was steady. No more fear. Only one thing remained: the resolve to not let the truth stay buried any longer. Michael looked at her for a long moment, then turned back to Derek. By now, Derek had taken a slight step back, blinking rapidly. Michael said nothing more. He gently placed his hand on his chest, pulled out a small metal badge and laid it face down on the counter. Leo saw it first and stepped back. Derek followed his gaze, and as Michael flipped the badge over the silence, turned strangely deep, Michael Foster, founder and CEO New Dawn Calf Derek, had stepped through the kitchen doorway like it was just another routine interaction. His chef coat sleeves were rolled up, revealing a dragon tattoo coiling around his forearm. A black mesh chef cap pulled low over his brow. His eyes swept over Michael like he was just another picky guest he'd seen 100 times. "What's wrong with the soup?" he asked, half smiling, half indifferent. Michael didn't answer right away. He quietly set the bowl back on the counter, still holding the napkin. His eyes didn't flinch. No fear. Just calmly studying every flicker of expression across the face in front of him. "You made this soup?" he asked again evenly. "Yes," Derek replied with a shrug. "It's a bestseller. Customers eat it all the time. What's the issue?" The sentence trailed off. But to Michael it was like nails across the frame of a fine piece of wood. It was the kind of slide where the person in charge of the kitchen no longer saw responsibility in every dish served. Michael gave a slow nod, then asked, "What ingredients did you use?" Derek didn't hesitate. "Canned cream base. Dried mushrooms from China, easy to store. Truffle flavoring, budget-friendly. Perfect cost optimization for the company." As those last words left his mouth, Michael's expression didn't change. But something inside his chest tightened. Not out of anger, but pain. Pain because perfect cost optimization for the company was exactly the kind of phrase he had rejected countless times from investors. Pain because it came from the mouth of someone wearing a chef's coat inside a space he had once built with his own hands. "Are you sure those ingredients are allowed in the system?" Michael asked again, this time his voice deeper. Derek scoffed. "I was told to be flexible. Management here approved it. As long as we keep costs low." Michael looked him straight in the eye. "Flexibility doesn't mean bending the rules. And low cost should never come at the expense of truth in a dish." Derek was about to reply, but right then, a sound came from the back of the kitchen. Clang. A stack of plates slipped from the dishwasher girl's hands, shattering at her feet. She crouched to pick them up, her face flushed red. Eyes locked to the ground, but her lips moved faintly as if wrestling with her conscience. Michael turned to her. "You all right?" he asked, his voice lower, gentler. The girl didn't look up. She just whispered, barely loud enough for him to hear, I'm sorry, but I saw him this morning pour expired cream into the soup pot." The words swept through the room like wind ripping through carefully hidden curtains. Derek whipped around. "Emily, what nonsense are you spouting?" Michael slowly stepped toward the girl, who was now standing, hands, trembling eyes glistening. Not from fear, but from relief. The kind of release that comes when you finally let go of something you've held inside for too long. "You're sure?" he asked. Emily nodded. "I saw it clearly. The cream-based tub had been left since last week. Mold had grown on the lid. I asked, but he said boiling it would make it fine." Derek stepped forward. "You're just trying to ruin me. You're just a dishwasher." Michael raised his hand. "No one's accusing you. I'm just listening." He turned to another employee, the same young man at the counter named Leo. "Did you see that cream tub?" Leo hesitated, then slowly nodded. "I saw it in the storage room earlier this week. But the shift manager said it was still within date." Michael turned back to Derek. "Expiration dates are printed, but honesty is something you have to uphold. You're holding that ladle like it's a budgeting tool. But to me, it's a promise." Derek stepped back. He said nothing more. Michael pulled out his phone, dialed a number. His voice steady. "Angela, I'm at the Linden Hills branch. Call the internal audit team immediately. Shut down the entire kitchen." and get me the past 3 months' ingredient order history. He ended the call, then turned to the kitchen, every eye now fixed on him, stunned and silent. From this moment on, everything in this kitchen, every bottle of sauce, every bag of mushrooms, every packet of seasoning will be accounted for. Not to punish, but to restore trust. A staff member near the fridge gave a subtle nod as if they had been waiting for this moment for a long time. Michael turned to Emily, who still hadn't dared to look directly at him. "Thank you," he said. Her voice trembled. "I thought I'd be fired." "No," Michael said, his eyes warming. "You are the reason this restaurant will still have customers tomorrow." The kitchen seemed to freeze. Only the faint hum of the exhaust fan filled the air, and the soft clatter of a metal spoon rolling across the floor coming to rest by Derek's feet. But no one bent down to pick it up. Michael removed his cap, took off his glasses, revealing the face once seen on business magazine covers in the launch campaign of New Dawn and across countless leadership training sessions. His voice didn't rise, but each word cut through the false Polish coating that kitchen like a blade. "I'm Michael Foster, the founder of this place, and I just tasted the worst soup of my life made by someone who dares to call himself a chef." Derek stood frozen. No more smugness. No more "what do customers know" attitude. His face drained of color. Hands clenched as if he wanted to object, but his throat couldn't form a single word. Emily, the dishwasher, covered her mouth, eyes wide in disbelief at what she had just witnessed. Michael didn't look at anyone but Derek. "Do you know why that soup became a symbol of New Dawn?" he asked. "Because it wasn't just a dish. It was a commitment to every guest. A promise I made in my very first kitchen. Nothing cheap would be served here. No flavor built on lies." Derek's snapped voice cracking. "I was just following orders from management cost cuts." Michael spun around. His gaze now locked on the corner of the room where Todd, the shift manager, had been standing silently since the beginning. "Todd," he said, his voice now sharper. "Did you know about the ingredients changes?" Todd swallowed. I just thought the company was struggling. I was told to reduce costs." Derek suggested swapping a few items. "I thought it was still safe. So, and you didn't tell anyone." "I figured no need." "People were still eating it. No one got hurt." Michael didn't respond. He pulled out his phone. His fingers moved quickly across the screen, opening the internal inventory app, a system he had commissioned last year, rarely used personally. He entered the password. The screen displayed a breakdown of ingredients by date. "Linden Hills branch," he muttered. "Last 3 months. Match original invoices." Within a minute, the list loaded. Original ingredients: fresh cream organic mushrooms from their exclusive supplier Real Truffle, had stopped being ordered exactly 6 weeks ago. Replaced by a series of unfamiliar names: Flav Cream Chinese Mushrooms Grade B Aroma Truffle at 21. None of those companies were on the approved vendor list. Michael turned the screen toward Todd. "You signed for these orders?" Todd looked, then lowered his head. I signed." But the regional manager had already left the company. No one was checking. No one checking does not give you permission to stay silent. The air turned heavy. A staff member near the coffee machine backed into a steel cabinet, causing a cold metallic clang. Others had already stepped away from their stations, watching, waiting. Michael looked around, meeting each pair of eyes. "I'm not here to yell. I'm here to fix things. But what makes me angriest isn't the soup. It's the silence, the complicity, the quiet permission to compromise." Derek tried to gather his voice lower now. "We only did what we had to survive. You talk about ethics, but customers don't even notice. We can't sell a $15 soup if the costs stay that high." Michael stepped forward, his gaze turning noticeably colder. "You're wrong," he said. "Customers may not notice immediately, but taste doesn't lie, and I will never accept that kind of survival. Because surviving through deception isn't survival. It's rot." A soft sob broke the silence. Emily, until now quiet, finally spoke, voice trembling. "I knew speaking up today could cost me my job. But if I didn't, I'd lose my conscience." Michael nodded. Slowly, You won't lose your job, he said. You just saved the integrity of this entire brand. One person brave enough to speak up is worth more than 10 who bow their heads out of fear. He turned to Todd and Derek. You're both suspended immediately. An investigation team will be here tomorrow morning. All operations will be halted until I personally review every process in this kitchen. And if I find out that anyone at headquarters knew about this and turned a blind eye, they'll be leaving too. The entire kitchen stood still. Not from fear, but because for the first time in years, they all felt it someone was finally standing up for the values they thought had been forgotten. The kitchen door was closed. A sign reading "Temporarily out of service, we apologize" was placed in front of the main counter. No more sound of sizzling pans. No more coffee machines grinding. Only silence remained, a space where everyone could feel the change that had just occurred from deep within. Not just inside the kitchen, but in the way people now looked at one another. Michael stood in the middle of the dining room. Light from the window streamed across his face, tired yet clear. Around him were more than a dozen employees, some still wearing aprons, some having just taken off their gloves, standing silently in a semicircle. At the far end of the room, a few customers remained seated. Some had stopped eating. Some got up and stepped closer to listen. No one left. They were drawn into a moment they hadn't expected, a moment they now realized they were witnessing. Michael slowly looked at each of them. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice low and sincere, "for letting this happen in the very kitchen I once considered a symbol of trust." No one spoke. "Today," he continued, "I didn't come here as a CEO. I came as a customer, a person who believed the soup here always carried the flavor of honesty. And today, that dish betrayed me." Emily stood nearby, her hands clasped tightly together. Her eyes still held the tension that hadn't yet faded. Michael turned toward her, facing her directly. "You were brave. Not everyone can do what you did, to speak the truth when everyone else chose silence." She lowered her head. "I just thought if I didn't say anything, then no one else would ever dare to speak again." "And you were right," he said. Then in the silence that followed, he turned around and pulled a white envelope from his coat pocket. "This is a confirmation letter," Michael continued. "Starting tomorrow, you'll be enrolled in the company's full internal training program, not just because you were brave, but because you deserve to grow beyond your current role. You'll learn to cook to lead, and if you choose one day, you could run another kitchen of New Dawn." Emily looked at him, her eyes brimming with tears. She couldn't form the words to say thank you. She simply reached out, took the envelope, and gave a gentle nod, a nod filled with surprised gratitude and a deep sense of responsibility. Michael turned to face Derek and Todd, now standing silently in a corner after leaving the kitchen. They no longer resisted. Only their eyes revealed the fear and the slow burn of shame. "You're both suspended temporarily," Michael said firmly. "An internal investigation will begin tomorrow morning. Every invoice, every ingredient, every decision to make changes will be reviewed." Derek opened his mouth, but Michael raised his hand to stop him. "I'm not doing this out of anger," he said. "I'm doing it out of responsibility. Responsibility to every person who placed their trust in New Dawn, and to every employee who works here but hasn't been allowed to live true to their conscience." The room remained silent. Just then, a customer, a middle-aged man in a blue jacket, stood up and walked toward Michael. "I've lived in this neighborhood for 8 years, he said. "I used to bring my son here for soup every weekend. Today that soup didn't taste the same, and now I understand why." Michael looked at him and nodded. "But you know what?" the man continued. "I also know why I'll come back. Not because of the soup, but because someone here still holds on to the truth." That sentence made the whole room exhale, as if a collective breath had finally been released. Michael turned to look at the rest of the team: Leo, the young waiter, the girl at the coffee machine, the midday shift runner. "I know you're scared. Afraid that speaking up might cost you your job. Afraid that reporting something wrong might get you isolated. But that's not how New Dawn was built. And if you still want to stay, then help me rebuild from the beginning." No one refused. There was no applause, but there were nods. There were glances held longer than usual. There was someone clenching the edge of a tablecloth, trying to regain courage. Tiny details, but to Michael, they were signs of something truly transforming. He turned away, but before walking back to the small office behind the counter, he took one final look around the room. We may lose a day's revenue today, but if we do nothing, we'll lose everything tomorrow. 3 days later, a sign read, "Reopening all soups today are completely free." It hung on the window of the New Dawn Cafe in Linden Hills. Lines began to form before 9 a.m. Despite the chilly, rainy weather of early fall, no one came for the free food. They came because they heard a boss had returned to his own restaurant, tasted a dish, spat it out, and exposed a chain of wrongs no one dared to name. They came because they knew a girl washing dishes had stood up in a crowded kitchen, choosing truth over silence. And they came because they wanted to see if anyone still dared to cook from the heart. Inside the kitchen, lights had been on since 6 a.m. Michael Foster wore a chef's coat. No more baseball cap. No more round glasses. Just him, the man who once stood in the very first New Dawn kitchen with this very soup. And for the first time in 10 years, he was back in that same spot. Beside him stood Emily. Her blue apron fit neatly, hair tied up, both hands gloved, eyes focused. She was no longer the dishwasher from 3 days ago. No one had to say it, but everyone felt it. Today, she was part of the kitchen. Michael showed her how to heat the cream to the right temperature, how to saute onions and mushrooms just enough to keep their moisture. And most importantly, every time she seasoned, she had to smell, to taste, and to trust. "Never rush," he said. "The right flavor never comes with haste." Emily nodded. The aroma rising from the soup pot softened the entire kitchen. A scent every loyal New Dawn guest would recognize, warm, rich, and real. Outside, when the clock struck 11 a.m., the first guests were invited in. The dining area had been neatly rearranged. Fresh flowers placed on every table. A newly printed menu hung at the front counter today. "We are not selling food. We are restoring trust." Guests sat down, older folks, students, young couples. They looked at each other, whispering about what had happened 3 days ago. But when the first spoonful of soup was placed before them, no one whispered anymore. Everyone paused and tasted. Michael stepped out from the kitchen, quietly standing behind the counter, watching every expression. An elderly woman closed her eyes. A young boy smiled and said to his mom, "This tastes just like the first time I ate here." A middle-aged man murmured, "It's finally back." Michael said nothing. He just stood there like a real cook. No spotlight, no name needed. Just knowing the dish had found its truth again. Once the guests were settled, Michael returned to the kitchen. Emily was wiping down the soup pot, a light sheen of sweat on her brow. He walked over, poured her a glass of water, set it down beside the table. "Well done," he said. Emily looked at him. Her eyes carried something more, not just joy from being praised, but something deeper, recognition. "I used to think about leaving this industry," she said, "after so many times being silenced, ignored. But today, I want to stay. I've seen what a true leader looks like. Not someone who gives orders, but someone who stands in the kitchen and starts from scratch." Michael smiled. No nod. No thank you. He simply looked into her eyes as if passing on a responsibility he'd carried for half a lifetime. "You don't have to be me," he said. "Just never forget why you walked into this kitchen." Emily smiled for the first time that day. Soft but real. Just then, Leo, the young waiter, called from the counter table. "Four's asking for another bowl. They said it's been ages since we've tasted it right like this." Michael looked up. His eyes sparkled. He turned to Emily. "Can you handle the next batch?" Emily nodded. "With all my heart." Michael left the kitchen, walking past tables full of guests. As he neared the door, a local reporter stepped up. "Can you tell us how just one spoonful of soup told you something was wrong?" Michael paused. A small silence. Then he looked the reporter in the eyes and said slowly, "Sometimes one spoonful is all it takes to uncover the whole truth."